Disney Villains Land is one of the most exciting things to happen at Walt Disney World in years, and we've got brand new details. Hello everybody, welcome. Today we're going to talk about everything that we know about this brand new area that's coming to Magic Kingdom, take a look at some of the permits that have been filed, and discuss all the new layout details on what we can expect. Though we are a few years away from Disney Villains Land opening, most likely in 2031, we are already getting more and more details about what we can expect in this brand new area. It is hard to believe that it's been 6 years since we've had a major expansion of this magnitude at Walt Disney World. We had Pandora in 2017, and then Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in 2019. So it has been a while. Now, we have known for months where Disney Villains Land is going to be positioned within the park. It's going to be that beyond Thunder Mountain. It's really now less beyond Thunder Mountain and more beyond Tom Sawyer Island and Rivers of America and the Haunted Mansion specifically. It has been over a year since I first reported out on the South Florida Water Management District permits that were filed, where they did a very large ecological survey on the entire area of Tom Sawyer Island, Rivers of America, and all the space beyond Thunder Mountain, and even a larger area of study to understand the impacts of the water movement that was going to be taking place as they drained and got rid of that Rivers of America. Let's quickly review some of these permits. I'll throw them up really quickly so we can get an idea of the space and all the mapping. This red area is the Stormwater Master Plan. This includes Magic Kingdom specifically. And this was for the first phase of this Master Basin Plan to be executed. More phases to come, specifically related to improvements that they're going to be making in this basin region. The orange lines here represent the limits of construction area where they're expecting to be building things for the new Cars Land, Piston Peak, and the Villains Land. Now, this also includes anything in the red area, so we have all that space to work with. The yellow area is a gravel laydown yard, which is essentially used for construction purposes, moving equipment around, putting rocks, debris, all sorts of things there. This is where they will dump things like excavated land. And then the blue lines represent the total study area for this master plan, and you can see this thing is massive. This is about 700 acres of space total, which is very similar to the entirety of space at Epic Universe, including the hotels over there, the back of the house operations, all the unused land, and all of Epic Universe. That is a massive amount of space. That's how big of an area we're talking about. And this is because they have to consider all of the impacts to the surrounding area, not just where they're planning to do immediate construction, as far as how it's going to impact the wildlife, animals, water drainage, all sorts of things. They have to include that in this study. But it could also mean that they are planning on potentially using some of that space in the future. Now, I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to show this overlay that I've created, which is where I've kind of been speculating where they're going to be putting Villains Land and some of the future expansions they could be planning. This is my speculation. Aside from Villains Land Phase 1, we don't know anything else. But again, given the limits of construction, given the entire study area, this stuff is very feasible. So you see Villains Phase 1. There's a Villains Phase 2 potential expansion space that they could create more attractions and space for. Potentially even creating a Villains Hotel, which would be absolutely amazing. And that particular location would be perfect for a hotel on that sort of backside of the park, given the easy access in and out of that area from behind Magic Kingdom. And then this really out there crazy speculation of some sort of like Fantasyland hotel there in the green space. That's just me wishful thinking, but it would really be cool. So this is everything that we have known and been expecting, and as we've been getting more permits have been rolling in, a lot of this information is basically just being confirmed in that Phase 1 and the Piston Peak Cars area. But now we have brand new information that was recently filed with Florida's Wastewater Management, and this is the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. These are wastewater specific filings. And these filings give some specific detail about potential walkways and building structures that we can expect in Villains Land. And I'm going to overlay this on top of what I've already been speaking about, already been showing about what we think is coming to Villains Land based on the concept art and where it's going to be relative to the other areas of the park like Big Thunder Mountain and Haunted Mansion. And you can see they line up really well with what we've been saying we're going to get. However, at first glance, as I've been looking at this, it almost feels like it's a little bit smaller maybe than what we were expecting. It's kind of hard to discern from these specific filings on if these will be the only structures and buildings that we're going to get. If so, I feel like there are some things missing from what we saw in the concept art. So it could be that they've now had to think about Villains Land launching as a phase 1 and then potentially expanding later with a phase 2 in that same space versus phase 2 being a separate area that I've earmarked. Or it could just be not everything is represented on this filing. So on this map, you see these structures, these sort of squares, shapes here. These are representing foundations or building locations of where facilities will be, things like attractions, shops, restaurants, etc. And then they have these interconnecting lines that sort of go between them. Now let's compare this overlay with the concept art. We can really get an idea of what these are going to be. So looking at the concept art in the bottom right hand corner, that's your pathway in and out of Villains Land. Your primary pathway in and out of Villains Land from Haunted Mansion, Liberty Square area, over by Thunder Mountain, the Cars area, that primary path in. In the center right there of the concept art, you've got some sort of like town looking structure or restaurant of some kind. Top center, you've got Maleficent's castle there, the dragon, clearly a Maleficent coaster of some kind themed. Bottom center, more additional roller coaster here. On the left, you've got some play pads, interactive play pads and things on the ground. On the right, some shops and restaurant area. And in the back sort of center area, you see more structures here, most likely dark ride. So looking at this now overlaid in this sort of three-dimensional fashion, we can kind of see how the trail is going to take you into Villains Land. Let's start here first with Piston Peak because I don't want to pass over that. You've got this large shape here down. That's clearly the rally race attraction. It's going to be something very similar. We've talked about this already to the rally race attraction over there in Disneyland. The smaller structure there right above it, that's going to be most likely the second attraction. We've been waiting to find out what it is, some sort of like kid-friendly attraction, maybe a restaurant or something sort of anchored around that attraction. And then we have plenty of space, it seems, based on where these attraction or these facility buildings are sitting, for a nice bit of water to sort of hug the space between the Piston Peak and the Frontierland and Liberty Square. So it looks like we do have some space there for some water around that bottom half and curvature up towards Big Thunder Mountain. And that aligns to the concept art for Piston Peak, the fun map design, and we see water there, and then we see some entrances into Piston Peak on the right side. So now let's talk about the villains structures. The very first thing there, walking in that path, I've got a question mark box there because we don't really know what that's supposed to be. In the concept art that we received, you can kind of see that pathway. The only thing that is in that space is this kind of town-looking space, almost like a place where some shops and things. It's a pretty good vertical amount of size. It goes up. It's not a small little structure. It's not a tent-covered building. It doesn't look like a small small little building or museum. It looks like there's a town over there. But this is not a huge structure on this map. It's only about 6,000 square feet. However, I would be remiss if I didn't say Cinderella Castle is only 8,000 square feet around. But Cinderella Castle looks massive because it has so much vertical space as it goes up. It's a massive 8,000 square foot footprint that towers up. So you very well likely could use a 6,000 square foot plot of land and do something pretty big and cool with it to create some sort of tall, town-like or castle-like structure as what's in the concept art. But this also could be restrooms. I feel like it's kind of an odd place for restrooms. It's right near the Tangled restrooms right around the corner. So putting another restroom in this spot feels a little strange to me. So it also could be a Haunted Mansion extended queue, given the proximity to Haunted Mansion. We know they're doing work around rethinking the queue space. We know they've hired firms. I did a whole entire video on Haunted Mansion, and they've hired some new firms to come in and do a lot of like rock work and aging work and things like that for Haunted Mansion. So they could be thinking of some new queue area over there. This could also be a restaurant of some kind, or probably not a full-blown restaurant, but maybe more of a lounge of some kind. But again, it could be a lounge that's not actually villains. This could in fact be a Haunted Mansion themed lounge of some kind. Now, if you look at something like Gaston's Tavern over in the Little Mermaid area of Fantasyland, that's only about a 3,000 square foot structure. Again, this is about a 6,000 square foot structure. So you could easily create some sort of like Gaston's Tavern or lounge type thing like Beak and Barrel over by Pirates of the Caribbean. You could easily do something there with 6,000 square foot for Haunted Mansion or villains. But again, the proximity to Haunted Mansion seems to me like it's probably going to be more themed to that. It really depends on these lines. What do these lines represent in this filing? Again, let's go back to, this is a wastewater management filing. And these lines reference hooking into other things. So this could be the sewage lines, drainage of some kind where they're expecting water to be drained, which could infer that these lines are going to be representing pathways, concrete pathways with drainage and sewer lines or water lines underneath of those. But I am not an architectural blueprint master. I don't create these things for a living, so I don't know exactly what they are, but it could very well indicate these are going to be where our walkways are. So if these lines end up being walkways, it could mean that that first building there on the right is in fact not part of Villains Land and will be part of Haunted Mansion. Whether it's a queue, restrooms, or otherwise, or some sort of lounge, Haunted Mansion most likely. Which means that the first signs of Villains Land will be further up the track where this large building is, which is about 16,000 square feet, which is a really large structure. 16,000 square feet, and the shape of that particular structure does sort of line up with something like the Emporium on Main Street in the Magic Kingdom, which is also around 16,000 feet in size. And that's a pretty good building there. It's pretty long. It's got a lot of different things happening from a shopping perspective. If you've been in the Emporium, you know. So if this is indeed part of Villains and this is the entrance to Villains, you're going to still need something on the left side there to block off Big Thunder Mountain. So the long structure shops and things, you could use some sort of like forced perspective to make things look and tower above you and give you this feeling like it's the town, like maybe that's the town that you see over on the right. So if you think about the pathway, if we kind of shift the concept art now to where those buildings that we originally thought would be where that small building are, those buildings and shops and things are actually in fact now this long rectangle. Now the concept art maps up and makes more sense and fits a little bit better. So I think that long building may end up actually being those sort of white buildings and structures over there where you see what looks like a town and some shops. So then on the left side, my expectation of that pathway would then be those sort of craggy rocks and vines and thorns and things that are going to kind of try to block your view of Big Thunder Mountain. Now, could this building also be part of the roller coaster extending, some sort of feature or facade for the roller coaster to go through? Absolutely could be. We just don't know. Based on the concept art, it looks like the roller coaster comes all the way into the front area of Villains Land, and we're not seeing any major structures and things there, but there could very easily be concrete pylons and things installed in those locations. So now as you sort of come around the corner beyond those shops and sort of arc over to the right now, if you follow that pathway, now it kind of lines up more with the concept art. And over on the left side, you see the roller coaster. This is the big Maleficent Villains roller coaster there with Maleficent, the dragon, the castle. And this structure is marked as about around 55,000 square feet. Just to give you scale perspective, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, the entire area there with the queue, the area, the surroundings, that island almost in Magic Kingdom, that's about 80,000 square feet for everything. So this 55,000 square foot building facility here very well is probably the roller coaster and whatever indoor portions of the roller coaster there will be. And then the roller coaster itself will then extend out into other areas of the park that aren't part of that 55,000 square feet, and that would make sense. Now, as we continue up that path and over to the right, if you follow the concept art, if you follow the track on this 3D layover, this is where that dark ride is going to be. And this dark ride is massive. I mean, absolutely huge. Around 83,000 square feet or more. It is not a small ride. This will be one of the largest dark rides in all of Walt Disney World. Even Space Mountain itself is 80,000 square feet. So this thing is going to be huge. This is not going to be a Haunted Mansion. It's not going to be a Peter Pan's Flight. This is going to be a marquee attraction on the scale of Battle at the Ministry over at Epic Universe or Monsters Unchained, Space Mountain, Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind. This is going to be a monster. And then straight back on that pathway to the center between those two big structures, we've got a smaller structure there. This is about 8,500 square feet, which really does line up very nicely with the Tiana's Bayou railroad station there with the restrooms included. That entire space by Tiana's Bayou, if you include the restrooms and all that, is around 8,000 square feet. So this being 8,500 square feet definitely does set it up for being a train station and potentially the main restrooms bank for Villains Land. If you think about maybe creating another Tangled restrooms type in that space, if you look in the concept art, you've got all these these buildings and towers and spiked minarets and things like that. That could definitely be a really cool forced perspective themed restrooms and railroad station. Now, another thing we haven't talked about in the concept art is these play pads. There's clearly some sort of like interactive play pads or lighting features or something. Based on where I'm pivoting the concept art, it looks like that might be somewhere in that center section where you branch off from that shopping area into the dark ride and roller coaster space. Maybe a more of an exposed open central section with some sort of play pads there. We also see a water fountain feature that is in the concept art near those shops and restaurants that could easily be fit in there based on where those water waste lines are going and things and where these buildings are. You can kind of see where that would be manifested. And then there's this line that sort of goes off to the left side of the filing there where you can see another building far off into the distance. That is definitely going to be some sort of backstage facility. I don't think that's going to be necessarily part of Villains Land. But it does signal that line going over there that there could very well be a phase 2 as what I had originally talked about, which may end up being a phase 3 depending on how this goes. There could be more stuff going to be going in over in that area as they continue to expand beyond Thunder Mountain. And then one of the last things I want to talk about is, could there in fact only be one entrance into Villains Land? We were originally thinking that Thunder Mountain might come over together to Haunted Mansion in sort of like an arced path and bridge those two things together. But based on what we're seeing in this filing and based on the fun map style of Piston Peak, it looks like that might in fact actually be closed off, that Frontierland will end where Frontierland ends today. And there will actually be no entrance from Frontierland on that side into even Piston Peak. If you look at the fun map, there are 3 entrances from the right side, starting there over by the Liberty Square area and Haunted Mansion. There's 3 main entry points, walkways, in that fun map, which coincidentally coincides with those 3 lines on the recent filing with the wastewater. So this seemingly confirms that there will be those 3 primary paths that sort of start heading into Piston Peak, and then that one long path there continues to go up, kind of touching between Piston Peak and the Liberty Square, up into Villains Land with only one entrance in and out of Villains Land. So if this filing is accurate, it seems like we've got a pretty good picture of what we're going to be getting there in Villains Land, and it seems like this is matching up very well with what I've been speculating for a while. But overall, it seems like it might be a little bit smaller, unless there's more things that are still hidden that haven't shown up in this filing, but still also could potentially be a Phase 1 and Phase 2 where they add more stuff. Could be just some things aren't shown on that filing. Maybe there's some things missing. We're not sure, so we'll find out. As soon as we know more, we will let you know on this channel. Let me know what you think. If you've heard other things, if you think anything about this is wrong, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until I see you next time, the Noble Way is the easy way. Bye-bye, everybody.